You're listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 194, How to Be Okay Single. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, breakup coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, beautiful Bravehearts. How are you doing? I have an amazing special guest here today. Her name is Sierra. And instantly when she signed up, I really read her name as Sierra. This beat is automatic, supersonic, hypnotic. Just threw me into that. And I also think it's funny that I remember like all the words from that song, but I can't remember really important things that I should remember. But like lyrics to a song, I remember always. But every time I called on Sierra's name, that is what popped up in my head. I'm super obsessed with her, love her to death. So I'm very excited to dive into today's episode with you. Sierra, why don't you just give us a little bit of an introduction around who you are, dive into your breakup story, tell us all the things.
Yeah, so funny story about that song. The only reason I actually know the lyrics to that song is because everybody sings it to me. I think it came out when I was like in elementary school or something, and I go to sixth grade dances and people would be like surrounding me like Sierra. So anyways, so I'm like, I know the lyrics and only because that's my name. So anyways, love the song too. But yeah, a little bit about me. I love to be active. I love volleyball. I love singing, dancing. I used to do musical theater. I don't really do it anymore, but I love to watch it. Karaoke, any sort of like just dancing, singing stuff is all my favorite. And then basically anything that has to do with water. I love swimming and I love reading personal development books. And so I've been super involved with a lot of different coaching programs because I'm really into that. So I am a body confidence coach. What I do is I help women to let go of dieting and develop a better relationship with food and their bodies. And the reason I got into that is because that's something that I myself struggled with a lot. In the past, I had a lot of anxiety around food and around my body. And I worked really hard at overcoming that. And because of all the hard work I did, it just brought so much freedom and it's just an amazing feeling to have moved past that. And so I've devoted my life to helping others to find that same freedom. So that's a little bit about me.
Where do you live? Tell us where you're located.
Oh, I live in Utah.
Yes, love Utah. And it makes sense as to why you like the outdoors because it's gorgeous
it's
there.
Such a great place for the outdoors. I mean, so much like rivers, lakes, hiking. It's really fun. Yeah.
I love that. And it was also so great to have you in the program as a body confidence coach because I feel like many women struggle with that. And I feel like a lot of women in my program end up working on that. So it was always so great that you were there.
Yeah, I didn't even really think about it until I was in your program, but I noticed a lot of women saying like it caused a lot of body image issues because their ex broke up with them. And I actually think that's really common. I had the same thing because my ex that I was trying to get over was a huge help in me overcoming that. And so then when we broke up, some of those feelings came back of like, now I don't have this person to validate me and tell me that I'm beautiful and that I'm sexy and all this stuff. And I think that's really common for a lot of women when they break up. It's like, I don't have this person telling me that I'm beautiful anymore. So I just think I'm ugly and I hate my body. And sometimes the breakup comes because the guy didn't like your body or whatever. And so it just creates so many issues.
Yeah.
So I do actually see those as like pretty related.
So good. You're going to have to come on and we'll have to do another whole episode specific to that at some point.
Yeah.
I would love
that. Yeah.
Okay.
I would love that. Let me know.
So tell me a little bit about what led you to the Get Over Your Ex program. Tell us about your breakup story because you did the Braveheart Festival. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when you signed up to the program.
Yeah. So what led me to signing up for the Braveheart Festival was I met my ex shortly after I moved to Utah. So I moved here 4.5 years ago. I met him and we dated for a year and a half. We were super in love. It was an awesome relationship. We were best friends. We had so much fun together. So we decided that we were going to get married. We got engaged, and shortly after we got engaged, I became like the most anxious bride that there ever was. And I just had a lot of insecurity about our relationship, about him, all these insecurities that I never had before. And we ended up continuing to date for 6 months. And then eventually we broke up. And during that whole period of us being engaged, I started working with a relationship anxiety coach. Because I mean, I think it's something I've always struggled with, but I didn't really realize it until that relationship. And so I worked with her through that. And I actually, after we broke up, jumped right into another relationship. Oh, I forgot to mention. So after we broke up, we dated on and off for about a year after we broke up. And then after that was like completely done. I kind of jumped into another relationship because that's just kind of what I do, because I am too scared to be single and alone. So anyways, once that relationship ended, we dated for 7 months. We broke up. I was talking to my relationship anxiety coach, and I was like, I don't know if this program applies to me anymore because I'm not in a relationship and I don't want to be. I kind of had finally decided I need to be single for a little while. Because that's not something I've ever really done. I've always relied on relationships. And I realized in this second relationship that I jumped into that I was not over my ex. I still had a lot of healing to do there. So she actually recommended you to me. I think she specifically recommended your Get Over Your Ex program. But, I looked into you and started listening to your podcast, and then I got really lucky because it was like a week before the Braveheart Festival that I started listening to it. So in one of the episodes, you mentioned something about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this free event, like this is exactly what I need right now. So I kind of shifted. I stopped doing the relationship anxiety coaching and I started focusing more on breakup coaching, because I felt like that's what I needed at the time. And so anyways, the entire Braveheart Festival, I just was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I need, because I didn't feel like, I wasn't in panic mode. It wasn't like, the ex that I had gotten engaged to, we had broken up quite a while before that. And so I wasn't in panic mode, like grasping to like feel better, all this stuff. But I knew that I needed to figure out how to have an awesome life without him or any man for that matter in my life. And that was something that I could see during the Braveheart Festival, that's what this whole program was about. It wasn't even so much like getting over your ex, but it was like building this awesome life without somebody in it, whether this person's in your life or not. And that to me, I was just like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I need. So it wasn't even a question. I was just like, yep, I'm signing up for this program. And so I did.
Yeah.
I was like the first person that signed up.
Yes, you were.
Or I think I tied with somebody else or something, but.
And I even think it was like, I don't know if it was on the call or if it was shortly after the call, but I remember I was doing like, whoever signs up first gets like an extra something or other. And yeah. That was fun.
Yeah. So I signed up right
so
away.
good. I'm so excited because now I feel like I just love getting to know you and being a part of your journey. So I'm glad that you signed up. That was super fun.
Me too.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about what was it that you really struggled with most when it came to the whole getting over your ex and building the bigger and better life? And I also think if you could tell us a little bit about, because I don't necessarily know if you were getting over both. You had really talked about, actually, I'm just going to let you go into what you struggled with and then I'll tie it back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the biggest, I mean, there were two things that I felt like were my biggest struggles. And I think these could be related to both of my exes, but in reality, I was really trying to get over the first one, the one that I was going to marry. I felt like the other one was kind of a distraction. And so the two big things that I really struggled with that I felt like was holding me back from really getting over my ex, being able to put myself out there and get excited about dating again was the first one was just this overwhelming I guess thought. It just every single day for a majority of the day, I just kept thinking there's something wrong with me. And that was, I mean, that's been a thing basically anytime I'm single is like, there's something wrong with me. I mean, I think that sometimes even when I'm in a relationship, but especially when I'm not in a relationship. And I felt like this thought of there's something wrong with me, it affected my life a lot in three, I kind of broke it down into three separate areas where I felt like this thought was really affecting me. The first one really was like super related to my ex specifically. And I think it was just because of how our relationship ended. The whole thing was just really confusing to me. I didn't totally understand why I felt so anxious about marrying him. And that was really hard for me to, I guess, reconcile because I just didn't understand. And so a lot of thoughts went through my head of like, what is wrong with me? Like, why couldn't I, during the breakup, but then even like long after, it was like, why couldn't I just get over it? Why couldn't I just marry him? Why couldn't I just commit? Why couldn't I just accept his flaws? Why did I have to get so anxious? And so there was that whole piece to it that was just like completely related to my ex, and just how the breakup went down made me feel like there was something wrong with me and that I was never going to be able to find a relationship that was going to work because there was just something broken about me specifically, and it was just never going to work with anyone. And then I think the second big part of me thinking there was something wrong with me had a lot to do with not so much specifically about my ex, but just the fact that I was single now was really hard for me because I've always found a lot of validation in the fact that I'm in a relationship. And that's for a lot of reasons. I mean, physically you have this person who is there to validate you, to tell you, I mean, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but it's like, there's this person here who is going to tell me every day that I'm beautiful. And even on days where I feel so ugly, he's going to be there to tell me that I'm the most beautiful thing he's ever seen, and to tell me that I'm super cool and I have this awesome personality. And so then when you don't have somebody, at least for me, it's really hard for me to think those things about myself. So it's like the physical act of them telling me that stuff, but then also just knowing that I have a boyfriend is very validating to me. It's like, oh, there's somebody who loves me. And so I must be somewhat lovable. Like I must be cool. I must be pretty. I must be all these things. And so it's a lot easier, like self-esteem. I've struggled with self-esteem. Who has not struggled with self-esteem pretty much my entire life. And I always felt like those self-esteem issues, it felt like they went away when I was in a relationship. And so there was that part of just the fact that I was single and now I don't have this person validating me anymore. And so it constantly made me feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me. Like I'm not as pretty as everybody else who's in a relationship. They all have something that I don't have. And it feels like everyone else is in a relationship except for me. And so it just feels like I'm this like outcast. And so there must be something wrong with me. And then the third area that I feel like kind of I could see this, there's something wrong with me feeling coming up was just in the fact that it made me feel really incapable. And this kind of goes along with the fact that I was single now. But it wasn't so much like a validating thing. It was, oh, now I don't have this person who can do things for me. And we've talked about this before, like yard work and housework, these things that I really have no idea how to do myself. And I never needed to because I always had a guy who would do those things. And then especially, specifically this ex of mine, we were planning on getting married. So he was going to move into my house with me. And so he would just take care of the house. And I pretty much met him from when I first moved into this house. And so he kind of just has always taken care of it. And so now not having that person who knows how to do these things, it made me feel really incapable. Like I wasn't independent. I couldn't take care of a house on my own. Um, and so again, there's something wrong with me because I don't know how to do this and I can't figure it out. So that's like the first big thing that I struggled with, was feeling that there was something wrong with me.
Yeah. Let's stick with this topic first before we go into your second thing. I would love to follow this through of looking at, like, now that we can see that, what were your biggest turning points with each? I love how you put them in 3 buckets. So what were your turning points for each bucket?
Yeah. So I think I don't know if I feel like my biggest turning point, I don't know if I would say it necessarily like there were turning points in each of the buckets, but it was kind of an overall turning point that just kind of helped me like overcome all of this.
I
just
love
the
it. Yeah.
concept of me feeling like there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And that was you probably remember this because I was like freaking out and I was like writing in the community about like, oh my gosh, this is the biggest aha moment of my life. But and really this is like what the whole program is about, is just your thoughts. And it really just hit me that that if I can change my thoughts, then I will change my results. And that was huge for me. And it's not anything that was like new to me. I've heard it before. You know, we've all heard like, oh, if you believe, you can achieve. And I think my whole life I've always just been like, okay, that's cute, but that's not like, that's not actually a thing.
I love you so much. One of my favorite things about you is like the logic though. You're like, okay, in your whole, even the way
right?
that you just said that, you're like, that's cute, but like now what? And I feel like that's so
Yeah.
similar to who I am. I don't like anything that's like fluffy and cute.
Yeah.
I appreciate the cuteness of it, but I'm like, but what's the tangible next steps? What are we actually going to do to get a result? So
Yeah, I'm like, that makes a cute quote that I'm going to put on my wall at work, but also like, that's not real. So I feel like that's kind of like always been my thought. But then it was like halfway through the program, it was either on a coaching call or like during a video that I was watching of yours, and you talked about your coaching business and how you kind of like became a successful business owner. And you talked about how in order to become a successful business owner, you had to start acting like you already were one. And for some reason, the way you said it just hit me and made so much sense to me. I was like, oh my gosh, like if I want something, I have to start acting like I already have it. And I have to start thinking that I already have it. And I just never thought about it that way. I mean, it's the whole model. Your thoughts create your feelings create your actions, and your actions create your results. And it just hit me. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I want, I literally can have anything I want. If I, and I would hate myself a year ago for saying this, but if I just believe that I can have it.
It gives me chills though. It gives me chills because really the two, I think about the Get Over Your Ex program all of the time. I'm in it every single day. And the two outcomes that I'm creating for people that is so important that every single person who works with me has is, one, emotional maturity, truly feeling like, I don't want to say the word controlling your emotions, but truly understanding your emotions and not consistently reacting to them in a way that you wish you wouldn't. And then the second one is really about creating any result that you want. Like, I want everyone to not feel like their life is determined by who's in it. Your life is determined by you, and you are the one that gets to create all of your thinking, all of your feeling, and all of your action. And there is no one or no thing that can ever stand in the way between you and any result you ever want. And when it finally clicks, like you just said, the attachment for your ex is going to drastically decline because you realize it's not about him or her being in my life. It is about me creating it, regardless of whether or not they choose to show up in my life. And then the beauty of that is if you were to get back into a relationship with your ex or anyone else, you now don't feel attached in your relationships because you're like, I can create whatever result I want. So I might be talking about a result that I want to create with a partner, but I know that, oh my gosh, if I'm truly excited about this and they decide to drop off the face of the planet, I'm going to create this anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't think like, I think ultimately that's what created a lot of relationship anxiety for me and always has, because I get super attached to who I'm in a relationship with. And that happened with this ex of mine when we first started dating. I remember Googling how to not be obsessed with my boyfriend because I was obsessed with him. Like I wanted to spend every waking moment with him. And at the time, I didn't like think much of it because I was just like, of course I'm obsessed with my boyfriend. Like I love him and he's great. But then when we broke up, it just felt like the end of the world because now I didn't have this person that created all these things, you know, at least in my perspective at the time, created all these things that I couldn't have on my own. Um, like all the things we talked about, you know, somebody who can take care of things, somebody who can validate me. I didn't think that those were things that I could create on my own. And I think having having this whole idea of like my thoughts are what actually ultimately creates my results, having that make so much sense to me is really what helped me to like let go of this thought of there's something wrong with me, because I realized that I actually can validate myself. Like, you know, you talk about this, but it's like nobody actually validates us. Like literally they just say things, and what they say, we have thoughts about what they say. And that's what actually creates the validation. And I can have those thoughts regardless of what somebody is telling me. Like I can tell myself that I'm beautiful. I can tell myself that I'm awesome. I can tell myself that there's nothing wrong with me, that I can fix a lawnmower. And because I tell myself those things, then they actually become true because I start acting like somebody who actually believes those things. And then because I'm acting like somebody who believes those things, it becomes real. And
Yes.
so,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, a very real situation, I literally did fix my lawnmower, which was something like I never would have thought I could do. Like motors, I don't even know what to call it, but mechanics, I'm just like, nope, that's not my thing. I'm a singer, I'm a dancer, no thank you. But and it gave me so much anxiety to think about like, oh, fixing this on my own. But I just believed that I could. And I was like, I literally don't need a man in my life. I mean, I want one, but I don't need them. And I think that has dissipated a lot of the relationship anxiety I feel, because I feel like in the future, I'm not going to attach myself so much to the relationship, um, because I know I'm going to be fine if it ends.
Yes.
Like, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be able to validate myself. I'm going to be able to think I'm awesome and fabulous and all this stuff without having a man in my life. And I'm going to be able to fix things on my own. And that it's just super liberating. So I feel like, I mean, that was just huge. Like I'm still in shock. And that was like probably a month and a half ago that I had that aha moment. And I'm still just like, I'm obsessively like telling people about it. I'm like, you guys, it's all about our thoughts. Like, did you know this?
And isn't it funny too? I think my favorite part about that, Sierra, is the fact that you've been exposed to this work for so long. And I do truly believe that you knew thoughts created feelings. And then all of a sudden it clicks in this different way is just so awesome. I like love
Yeah.
seeing that change. And we have to talk about lawn mowing, you guys, because this was one of my most favorite things that happened. So every week I write a newsletter that goes out on Wednesdays. And this week I was writing it really last minute, not this week, but the week that this all happened. I think I was writing it last minute, like on a Monday, and it goes out on a Wednesday or something. And I post in the community about posting your wins and like, what's your win, this week. And I think I posted on a Monday, and I write this newsletter and I talk about like my win this week was really like getting to the work, mowing the lawn. I finally bought a lawnmower and I was mowing the lawn, and it really reduced attachment to, guys in my life, all this stuff. Everything that Sierra just said, I had that my own personal experience of that. And I post this picture in the newsletter of me mowing my lawn. And then all of a sudden I because I share a lot of the Braveheart wins in that newsletter as well. And I go to our community to pick out which wins I really feel like sharing this week. And the very first one was Sierra and a picture of her lawnmower. And I was like, this is phenomenal. And she had like almost the same experience, but just different because she was fixing her lawnmower. So I put your picture in the newsletter. I share that. And I call the subject line of the newsletter was breakups and lawn mowing or something, or lawnmowers and breakups. And it was just like, this is so perfect. I love this so much.
It was so, I mean, like I sent that newsletter to my mom, and I don't even like usually talk to my mom about this kind of stuff, but I was like, Mom, this happened. Like, this is so cool. And also, you know, I was just like proud of myself for fixing a lawnmower. I was like, my parents will never believe me that I did this. And it just was so funny because literally a week earlier, I had a complete meltdown about the lawnmower because it actually broke twice. And the first time I ended up just having a meltdown. I cried for like an hour. I was about to say a week, an hour. And it just brought up all these feelings about my ex. And I was like, if I was still with my ex, he could fix this. And oh my gosh, like I just miss him and I hate everything and I'm not over him and all this stuff. And then it just like clicked like in my mind. I was like, Sarah, if you just think that you can do it, like you can. Like there are so many YouTube videos about how to fix a lawnmower. Like you just have to do it. And anyways, it just like was so cool. And then the fact that you had the same situation, I was like, oh my gosh, like we are soul sisters.
I know, right? I'm obsessed. Okay. So let's talk about your other one. So that was kind of one of the things you struggled with most. What was the second one you were going to talk about? And I was like, let's finish up the first one. So tell me the second one.
Yeah. So I would say the second biggest thing I struggled with was forgiving myself. Because that whole relationship, or I mean, I guess the whole breakup really felt like it was my fault. We had such a great relationship and then suddenly it just went south and it was nothing on his part. He was on board the entire time. And I just was like, I got super nitpicky and uncertain about marrying him. And I think, he obviously was like the most important person in my life, and to watch the most important person in your life go through so much pain, and not that I was going through pain too, but like to watch him go through this pain of having his fiance tell him that she's not sure if she wants to marry him. And then having me like bring up all these concerns and making him feel like he wasn't enough and like he needed to change in order to be able to marry me. It just created so much pain for him. And yet, he was really sweet through it all. Like he was trying so hard. And it was just like, it was honestly so painful to watch him be in so much pain over this. And so, all through the breakup, but then even long after we broke up, I still just couldn't get over it. I couldn't forgive myself because I was like, it's all my fault that he felt that way. And I just kept feeling like, I think the hardest thing was that I believed that I could fix him. Like I could fix his pain. Like I could make it go away. And I wanted so badly to. And then, of course, it was just hard on top of everything else, like all the feelings I was having, but then to also have the most important person, the person I loved most, being in so much pain. So I think what was really hard was feeling like I could fix it and not being able to. And I think the big turning point for me there was realizing that I don't actually have the physical ability to change his feelings. And that was hard for me to understand because it just felt like, well, he wouldn't be in this pain if I didn't, have uncertainties. If I had just married him, we would just be happy and he would just be happy and everything would be fine. And so it felt like it was fully my fault. But once I realized that his pain was his pain, I guess it kind of lifted a big burden off my shoulders to realize that his pain, like those were his feelings coming from his thoughts. And I literally cannot control his thoughts, was just, I mean, that was another aha moment that he is the only person that can actually control his thoughts. I can control mine. I can control my actions. I can control what I do, but then what he thinks about what I did is all up to him. And that was just so relieving. It was like, oh my gosh, like there's literally nothing I could have done. I mean, I did everything I could, like, and I didn't, our whole breakup, I didn't do everything perfect. I definitely said things I probably shouldn't have. But I did the best I could with the information I had at the time. And that's all I can do. And then his thoughts and him feeling super bad about himself and feeling like he wasn't enough, like that's all his stuff that he needs to work through. And so that was really freeing for me to realize that.
I also want to tie back to your first point of what you were talking about in terms of, when we're feeling angry and resentful towards ourselves, it doesn't help you with the thought of there's something wrong with me. And it's not going to help you create any result that you want when we're feeling angry and resentful towards ourselves. I also think that it's interesting when people are in this situation that like you feeling angry and resentful isn't going to help them feel better.
No.
Right? Like, and then I know that we talk a lot about this, but you are a neutral circumstance to him, and you're neutral, like you as a human, he has a lot of different thought feeling options. And maybe the option he wanted to feel was pain. Like, obviously no one chooses the pain, but we don't want to feel good about the person that we love saying that they're uncertain. Right. Yeah. And I think that's the human experience that he might choose. I mean, we have no idea, like making so many assumptions, but like, if that happened to me, I think I would choose that human experience. I would want to feel disappointment about that. And, the loss and the grief that surrounds that.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, it would have been weird if he hadn't acted that way, if he hadn't felt that way.
Right. And I also think it's kind of crazy to think about how much pain would someone experience if you actually got married and then you were still uncertain, or you got uncertain after the marriage happened.
Yeah. And I think that's what also helped create some forgiveness for myself, was that I actually really did do what I felt like was best for both of us. And, the forgiveness piece was hard because it wasn't just me beating myself up. It was also things that he had said to me about me being selfish and me not caring about him and all this stuff. But just because he says that doesn't make it true. Like, I know for myself that I really did care about him, and I was honestly trying to do what was best for both of us. And that's what I thought about. I was like, if we got married, I don't think I would suddenly just become certain. I think I would still be uncertain. And that is way more painful to be in a marriage where you feel uncertain than to break up. And he didn't see it that way. And even I had a hard time seeing it that way. But now in hindsight, I'm like, oh my gosh, like ending things with him was the best thing I could have done for him, even though neither of us totally saw it that way. And it took me a long time to forgive myself for that. But I'm like, I actually did him a favor by ending things.
And here's the thing that I want all of us to just take a moment thinking about for this situation. Because I know some people who are listening, this might have happened to you and you're hearing about it from the other side. And I think I want us to all just close our eyes and think about for a second. Can you imagine walking down an aisle and either one of you feeling uncertain while saying your vows? And some people actually do this, go through a marriage where they feel uncertain. And none of this is right or wrong or good or bad. Like, I'm not saying any of that, but I only am saying this, Serena, because it's something obviously that I've personally experienced recently of, going through a called off engagement. And I think that for me, I really resonated to something you were saying. And all I can picture, like, I just remember going through this phase of uncertainty, and I couldn't imagine, not that we were going to have an aisle because we were going to elope, but I didn't want us standing there making lifelong vows and being angry at each other about things or being upset about something that we hadn't yet resolved. I've been thinking about it a long time since all of this happened back in November around, there are things that are coming up and like you could be completely certain and have these quarrels and resolve them after you get married. Like I can see that. But when they're bigger rooted things, I just couldn't imagine, standing there making lifelong vows when we're not on the same page about something. And that doesn't, again, it doesn't make any of this right or wrong or good or bad, but that's when you were talking, that was the vision that I had in me, is like, would he really want you to stand there and feel uncertain and say vows?
Yeah. And I like that you brought up the fact that it's not right or wrong or good or bad, because I've talked to lots of people through my experience who did feel uncertain and still went through with it, and they're still married and they're happy. I've also talked to people who had that same experience and they ended up getting divorced years later and weren't happy and they wish they hadn't done it. And so I'm like, there literally is like no right answer here, because people have done both and been fine, and some people, have not been fine. And I just was like, I don't know what my experience would be, but what I did know is it's not what I wanted. I didn't want my wedding day to be the most anxiety provoking day of my entire life. I wanted it to be happy and fun. And I just didn't see it being that way. And so, and I don't think if he had really thought about it, that's what he would have wanted either. But I don't think he saw it at the time. And so he
and it doesn't make it any less hard. All of this doesn't make it any less difficult, right? So much processing on the other side that has to happen, and all of it's welcome and all of it's amazing. So what do you feel like were your biggest turning points when it came to kind of the forgiveness aspect? I mean, we've talked about a lot, but is there any other turning point that's coming to your mind about the forgiveness piece, forgiving yourself, that we haven't talked about?
I guess something I would add is I know that we did a lot of work on, I guess, like, it was hard for me to forgive myself because I couldn't quite pinpoint why I was so anxious. But now, after the work I've done, I realize that I wasn't like really being honest with myself.
This is so good. I'm
we
so glad
talked about we talked about finances. That was a big hang up for me with him, was that he was not financially stable. We wanted to get married
in the way
and have
that
kids.
in
the way that I wanted. It could have worked for somebody else. And to be honest, I wanted to be that person that it would work for. I kept telling myself that money was not important. We could be poor, and as long as we were in love, that's all that mattered. Like, I was super into like romantic movies and Disney princess movies, and like, all that matters is love. And so that's why we ultimately decided to get married, because we were just so in love. Like, we just had such a great time together. But then when I actually started thinking about living a life with him, having a family with him, I just didn't see it playing out the way I wanted. And I have to be, understanding that life is never going to like totally turn out the way we wanted, but we can make steps. We can make decisions that kind of help guide us to kind of what we're wanting. And it just wasn't, I just didn't want a life where I was worried about money all the time. And that was so hard for me to accept about myself. I have never accepted that. I'm 31, and it has taken me 31 years to finally accept, like, oh, money is important. And it just wasn't something that I felt like was important to him. And that's not to say, I don't feel the need to be super rich, but I just saw a life that I didn't want.
Yeah.
And that is okay. And I didn't feel like that was okay. That was another thing that made me feel like there was something wrong with me, and also made it hard for me to forgive myself, because I was just like, why couldn't I just accept him for where he's at? And, why couldn't I just be okay with the fact that we were going to be poor? Isn't love the most important thing? So many thoughts. And I just had to accept that it is important to me. It creates options, and like you said, it doesn't need to be important for everyone, but for me, I just had to get honest with myself. And
That's
it was
so
important.
hard. Can we all just like
So
say,
hard.
yes, so difficult to be honest with ourselves when we have all kinds of beliefs about that subject.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, the number of times that I hear as soon as we get to pillar 4 and people are talking about their next relationship and their future. And I hear this all the time, is like this money thing comes up all the time. And everyone starts off the coaching with, I don't want to be superficial, but I need someone who like can make a stable living or a stable income. And it's like, why do we think that is superficial, that we want to be stable,
right?
Secure in finances? Why is
Yeah.
that superficial? So I'm just I'm really glad that you brought that up. I completely forgot that we talked about that, but that was such a huge thing. And I honestly, for anyone listening, if you're feeling confused, because notice how Sierra addressed that of, I didn't know why I was feeling so anxious. If you ask yourself, if I did know, or what's my best guess, get honest with yourself and let yourself go there. It is scary, but I promise you nothing's going to happen when you just admit to yourself the truth. You can just admit it and still do nothing with it. I promise you, you don't have to do anything with it, but just admitting it so that you can drop out of confusion is going to be so freeing to you and your body. It's going to feel good. And when you're feeling good, again, you don't have to do anything with it, but just like let it be there. And I think for you, as soon as you realize like, okay, I can just like admit this to myself. I can get comfortable with the idea. I don't have to do anything with it, but just like seeing it and being honest with yourself, it just feels really good.
Yeah. I literally, like, when I first found your podcast, I would skip all the episodes about money because I was like, oh, that's not important to me. And like, even in the program, there's like additional tools or like workshops and stuff about money. And I always skipped those because I was just like, money's not important. Money's not important. And it was like towards the end of the program, I just realized I was lying to myself. And it was really freeing to just admit it.
Yeah.
Because now I have such a better idea of like what I'm actually looking for.
Yes.
And so it's helped me a lot in dating.
And that reduces desire for your ex.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just kind of going back to what we were saying, it just helped me to forgive myself because I felt like that was wrong of me to care about that and to not want to be with him because of that. And so I was really hard on myself, but because I could just accept that like, hey, this is actually something that's important to me and that's okay that that's important to me, just helped me to forgive myself.
I love it. So good. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what would you tell the version of you who was really like in the thick of it?
Yeah. So when I think about the thick of it, I mean, my relationship was kind of all over the place with the breakup, but I would say the thick of it was the 6 months that we were engaged. And I didn't realize at the time that that was a breakup because I honestly didn't think we were going to break up. I thought we were going to work out. But those 6 months were the absolute like most miserable 6 months of my life. I felt so anxious all the time. I felt depressed. All I wanted to do was go to sleep because sleeping was the only break that I got from just like this hell that I was living in. And so what I would tell myself is at that time is that the day will come that you will actually have a really hard time going to sleep at night because your awake life, your reality is better than your dream life. And that is not something I ever would have believed at the time because I was just like, there's no way, like, this is my only break. I hate my life. I don't want to be awake. But now, like, I literally, I go to bed so late every single night because I just love life. I'm like, I just feel like I'm thriving. And that's what I would tell myself when I was going through the thick of it, is that one day you literally are going to thrive. Your life is going to be better than it has been, even during the best times of, this relationship with my ex up until we got engaged, was the best relationship ever. It was the best year and a half of my life. We had so much fun together. We were best friends. Like, it was honestly just like such a perfect relationship. But even the best day of that relationship does not compare to what my life is like now. And again, that's not something I ever would have believed back then, but I would tell myself, just hang on because your life really, like, you are going to thrive after this. And not only is it going to get better? But it's going to be better because of the breakup. Like this breakup is the best thing that's ever going to happen to you, like up to this point in your life, because of the things you're going to learn through it. And I mean, I could go on for hours about all the positive things that came into my life because of this breakup. And at the time I didn't see that, but now it's, you know, when I just think about the people I met because of it, and the knowledge I've gained, the opportunities I've had, it's just, I just couldn't imagine my life going any other way. Like this breakup needed to happen, and I'm so thankful that it did. And so I would tell myself basically all of that. Like your life is going to actually be like so good. Like you are going to love being awake because your reality is just going to be better than your dreams. And so that's what I would tell myself.
I needed to wear like waterproof mascara because I didn't realize I'd be crying today. So good. So good. I mean, getting to that place feels so amazing. And I know some people who are listening who are really in the thick of it right now it is available to you. It is so available to you. I promise you. And is there any advice? Like, what would you tell her to do? Like anyone who might be going through what you were going through, or who's listening and is just like, I really can't even fathom what you're talking about right now. What would you tell them is like the next step, or like, what's one step they could take today to kind of change things?
Well, to sign up for your program, honestly.
I mean, that will be a drastic change. That is a very good change. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's huge. I mean, it's a big decision. But you know, and I mean, I guess what would just a step, because I mean, I didn't sign up for your program till after we had been officially broken up for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, so it's not like I was actually in the thick of it when I signed up for your program, but when I was in the thick of it, I guess advice I would give somebody is to not try and, you know, not trying to like make yourself feel better. Cause I feel like I was just grasping for things to like make myself feel better, because, you know, that's what we all do when we're going through hard things. We don't want to feel the hard feelings. We want to just, you know, like I found every therapist I could that didn't have a waiting list. And I literally saw like 4 therapists in 1 week because I was so like freaking out about my life and what was going on. And I couldn't understand it. And not that like I would necessarily change anything about what I did, because I'm really glad at how everything ended up. But I would say like, don't grasp for like trying to feel better. Like just feel the hard feelings. And just know in the back of your mind that it really is going to get better. Because I feel like that's the only thing that got me through, is that hope that things were going to get better, and they just really suck right now, and not trying to make them better in this moment, but just having that hope that it eventually was going to get better.
That's so good. I'm going to piggyback off of that, because we just did a coaching call inside of Get Over Your Ex yesterday, like last night. And one of the things that was talked about was like, this isn't forever. Like this isn't forever. So even if you can just sit there with the idea, like, this isn't forever. Like none of my stuff in my life has lasted forever. And so this isn't going to be forever, even if it feels like forever. Cause I know when I was in the thick of it with like the miscarriage and everything, 2 weeks felt like forever. And then I was like, oh my God, we're at 2 months and I'm still not better. What? And so that also felt like forever, but I had to have that like idea, like this isn't forever. None of this is forever. And that kind of brought me some solace. So just wanted to piggyback off that.
And it's hard because it really does feel like it's going to be forever. But just knowing it's not is really, I think, what got me through it.
So good. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to say? I feel like this recording's been amazing. I'm so excited to share it with all the brave hearts who are listening. So is there any last thing that you want to share with them?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would add is, you know, if you're listening to this podcast, listening to me, it's like, my life is so awesome now. It's like, woohoo, like I did it. Everything's great. But I want to be clear that it wasn't easy. Like it was actually incredibly hard to get over my ex. And like, if you sign up for this program, you're not just paying money and, doing this program and then you're going to be cured. Like, it actually requires a lot of hard work. And, I had to commit to getting over him, which was actually really hard. I remember my first thought after like sending through my payment for the program, I was like, oh shit, what if this works? And I was like, I don't want it to work. Like, I don't want to get over him. I'm not ready to like be okay without him. Like, all these things. And I was like, is there a refund policy? Like, I don't want to do this actually. And I don't know if you remember, but there was a coaching section of the Braveheart Festival. And it was like after I had just signed up and I got on and I said something to you about it. And I was like, I am having a hangover of like, I just signed up for your program. I don't know if I actually want to do this. Like, and you were just like, that's so normal. Like, I actually like expect that. And
it happens every single time because you're actually making a different decision. It feels very scary to make a different kind of decision. It's terrifying.
Yeah. And
I remember coaching you on commitment like the first week and you're like, I clearly have a commitment problem. And I was like, no, boo. No, you don't. You have a thought problem.
Right? That all just goes into like me thinking there's something wrong with me. I'm like, I have commitment issues. I have these issues.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately what it came down to is I realized that I didn't want to let go of him. Like I did not want that. That was really scary to me. But what I did want was a bigger and better life. And I knew that the only way to do that was to let go of him. But it was so hard. Like I had to be open to doing things that just scared just scared the crap out of me. And that is so hard. And I mean, it was every day of that program was hard. But if you can get brave and do it, like that's where the magic happens, is when you're doing things that are really hard and feeling feelings that are really hard to feel. So that's what I would add, is just like, life is really great on the other end, but that's not to say that getting there is like going to be easy by any means. Like, it is quite the opposite. So
it's life-changing. And again, you're learning a new way of making decisions, a new way of doing things. It's super uncomfortable. I feel like I've said this before in the past, but I feel like the first 4 weeks of the program are really difficult. Learning to experience emotion and not run from them, and sitting with all the things that you just talked about of like, do I actually even want to get over this person? It's interesting that the mind drama goes there, because it's like, can we actually focus on, do I want to get over this person or do I not want to get over this? Because then I don't have to deal with the actual shit.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I didn't want to do the actual work, but it was kind of too late. Like, I already signed up for the program and I was like, well, I guess I'm going to do it now. But I'm glad that you had your little like, oh, if you're the first one to sign up, you get a one-on-one, because that's what got me to just like do it quickly and not think about it. And I'm so glad I did that, because if I had thought about it, I wouldn't have done it.
Isn't that crazy? I agree with that. Like, I find it so funny because in the coaching industry, we talk a lot about like, business and marketing related things. And we do these like bonuses and stuff. And I've gone back and forth between like, do I want this program to be open all of the time? Or do I want to do cohorts of this program? And ultimately I decided I wanted both, because the cohort gives you kind of like a deadline of like, we're doing this and we're doing this now, which I think is useful and needed, which is where kind of like what you were talking about, bonuses and whatever. But then I also think there's that person that I want to serve who finds my stuff and then is in like the thick of it. Like, I just see her sitting on her bed, crying, absolutely fucking devastated, and she needs help. And I can't imagine her going to my page and being like, I want help from Dorothy, and I can't get it because I have to wait until September 25th or whatever the next cohort happens. I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I want you to be able to get the help that you need. Even if I'm sleeping, you can go in there and watch all the videos before the next morning and then talk to me that next morning. So it's like, that's kind of like the vibe that I wanted. So I'm kind of glad that you said that, because it's still like, sometimes we still need that extra little oomph to get going. But I also want it to be available to everyone else who is like, I need it now.
Yeah. Breakups don't wait for programs to be available
to
happen. Like they happen all the time. And it really sucks. That's why like, I was just like, okay, I can go listen to her podcast. I can, and I just had a friend break up with her boyfriend like a week ago. And I was like, let me send you some podcasts. And so I sent her a couple of your podcasts, and it was, she found it really helpful. And it was just nice to have something available for
Right.
when she's in the thick of it. She is in the thick of it right now, and she can't wait for, a program to open up. So it's hard to figure out what is the best thing to do, but
good.
Yeah.
Awesome, Boo. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time and for you sharing your journey and being so vulnerable. I know it's going to be super helpful to so many people. I also will leave all of her contact information. So if you are struggling with body image work, she'll have her information in the show notes. Is there anything else?
No, just thank you so much for having me, and thank you for putting on this program. Like,
Yes.
I know other people are having the same experiences that I am, and it's making a huge difference. So thank you for doing this work.
Thanks so much. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.